Hey guys, today we want to talk about 3 research-backed ways of improving contentment in our finances. But if today's your first time joining us, thanks so much for hopping on. My name is Michael Foley. I'm a son of 2 doctors, a certified financial planner, and a certified student loan professional. And I developed lifestyle creep, and we're all about just meeting people where they're at in their finances and really aiming to help healthcare workers to live more humble and quiet lives. But let's dive in today. So before we dive into those 3 different things that increase contentment, let's talk about the opposite. What is human desire, right? And so old proverb that King Solomon actually used, it equated one of the things that is never satisfied is human desire, and he actually equated human desire to like being like a fire. And so he described it as, if you continue feeding a fire is never satisfied and continue wanting to light more things on fire. So I thought it was just a really good visual as we looked in that. And, it came across kind of almost a disturbing quote that from the Lehman Brothers. This is, for those who aren't familiar, they're a big investment bank that they ended up going bankrupt in 2008. There's a whole ordeal around that, but they're really one of the big drivers of kind of the philosophy around marketing, and really spoke to it kind of hit home when I read that. So one of the quote reads, "We must shift America from a needs to a desires culture," wrote Paul Mazur of Lehman Brothers. People must be trained to desire, to want things even before the old has been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality in America. Man's desires must overshadow his needs. So that was just crazy to think, you just think about how much we're being attacked with that sort of mentality when we're on social media, when we're on YouTube, we're getting ads, and, we're constantly bombarded by how our kind of, how can they feed into our desire to want more, right? And so what are some research-backed ways that we can combat this, right? Because we're at war with this in a constant battle. So first thing is reduce time on social media. It seems like an obvious one, but that's the biggest avenue that these marketers have at grabbing hold of your attention and feeding into your desire. So if we can limit that time, that's going to be a huge back. And what research says on this is that more time spent on social media decreases perceived emotional support, increases fear of missing out, and lowers self-esteem. I can't think of any better concoction to feed into desire to want to buy more things, to feed into our desire to want more, right? So if we can limit our time on social media, that's step number 1, right? Step number 2, set goals. So how can we set some goals? Because people with goals are nearly 20% more satisfied with their lives than people without goals. So it's that easy, right? If we can just set some goals and have some financial goals and really try to get very narrow focused on, what do we want to be accomplishing with our hard-earned money, that's going to really increase our life satisfaction and help us to deter away from that constant seeking of the next thing, or what else do we want to feed that fire of desire, right? So the last thing that, is research-backed that we want to help to improve our contentment is, how can we spend our money wisely? And so they did a study, and they broke down what are some of the most the things that people spend money on that derive the most fulfillment and happiness from, right? And then what things are the most highly regretted, and what are the most highly regretted expenditures. So let's start with the top 3, okay? So top 3, I use the acronym GET, G-E-T. So G is giving to others. So if we can give money to others, or if we can buy something, pick up somebody's tab, that's seen as one of the most fulfilling things that we can spend money on, right? So that's the G. E is experiences. So if we can spend money on experiences, that's going to drive a lot more satisfaction. And it makes sense, right? If you think about it, when you go plan a trip, right, you're getting satisfaction when you're planning the trip, thinking in anticipation of what is that trip that you're going to have, and then you have the trip, and then all the reminiscing about the trip, right? So there's so much of a bang for your buck from a satisfaction standpoint that there's no surprise that made the top of the list there. But what's the last one? T is time savers. So things that we can spend money on that are going to save us time on different things are scientifically proven to show that they are going to increase our satisfaction on that, right? So those are great. But the bottom two were a little shocking to me. So when we looked at the bottom two, so the bottom one, I'll tell you, is bank fees. So that's not a shock, right? Nobody wants to pay like overdraft fees. That's a highly regretted expense on a monthly basis, right? But right next to bank fees was eating out. I couldn't believe it. Eating out was right on neck and neck on the most regretted financial expense, according to Ted's research on this. So makes you kind of think, a lot of times in our head we think of like eating out as an experience, right? But a lot of times it's not, and you're just eating out to get a quick bite or something like that, and that's seen as one of the most highly regretted expenses. So good food for thought as we're heading into this into the new year here. But hopefully this has been helpful for you, and hope to inspire you to continue living more humble and quiet lives, and hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks so much.